Welcome, everyone, to the Girlfriend Book Club's monthly discussion. I'm Shelley Emling, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club. And this month, April, the more than 100,000 members of the Girlfriend Book Club chose The God of the Woods as our monthly pick. And I'm so glad you did. I went through this book really quickly. It was fabulous. And I loved it. And I'm so thrilled that we're joined tonight by the author, Liz Moore. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
Thank
Really
you for joining us.
Thank you.
So first of all, I just have to ask, as every member of our book club wanted me to ask you, where did you get the idea for this book?
A lot of places. So I have a long family history in the Adirondack Mountains. My ancestors moved there in the early 1800s and formed small farms there, two different farms. And then they were actually displaced from there. They moved just south of the Adirondacks, which is where my grandmother and my mother were born and raised. But we still have a family cabin in the southern Adirondacks, and I go there a lot now with my kids. So I'm pretty connected to the area, and it was really the area that that was the first kind of spark of inspiration for the book. And there are some other sources of inspiration as well, which we can get into, but I guess I'll start with that.
Well, one of the members of our book club said, were you inspired at all by the Oklahoma Girl Scout camp murders in 1977?
I was not. In fact, I did not know about them until other readers mentioned the same things to me. Yeah, so now I know what they are, but no, they were not part of I was not aware of them before I wrote and published the book.
So how did you come up with the idea to do the murders? I mean, was there a missing persons case you followed or no?
No, there was. So in terms of any real life crimes that inspired the book, there was a real serial killer who haunted the Adirondack Mountains in the 70s named Robert Garrow. And my parents and my aunt and uncle have strong memories of being very scared, while he was on the loose, because he escaped. There was a manhunt for him, and then he was taken into custody and incarcerated, and then he escaped actually from incarceration, and there was another manhunt for him. So there's a secondary character named Jacob Sluter in the book,
Yes.
who was inspired by Robert Garrow. And then in terms of the dynamics of the family and the wealthy family with a summer home and who formed a summer camp down the hill, a lot of the kind of class dynamics in the book were inspired by the fact that very wealthy dynastic American families did discover the Adirondacks in the late 1800s and really did build what were called great camps up there. Which were great camps are not summer camps, but the culture of the mansion in the wilderness and the kind of upstairs downstairs nature of the very wealthy family at the center and all of the people who serve them came out of the history of great camps in the Adirondacks.
It's a great setting for a book, for sure, for a mystery.
Thank you. I had fun imagining the place as well.
Yeah. So one of our members also said she loved your book, Long Bright River.
Thank you.
She just asked when you do a book like The God of the Woods, do you know the ending when you start? She wanted to know, or is it something that comes to you as you're working on the book, or what exactly?
I do not know the ending of any book when I start it. I don't outline in advance. I don't pre-plan. I just start writing. I know where the book will take place, and I know the main characters in the book, and I know the first problem that they will have to solve. So in the case of The God of the Woods, I only knew that there would be a wealthy family, that they would own a summer camp in the Adirondacks, that they'd send their daughter, and that she would disappear. And other than that, I knew nothing. I didn't even know that, for example, there would have been a second disappearance earlier. And so when I discovered that, as I was writing, all of a sudden I had like a double mystery on my hands, and it required a lot more work. But ultimately, I think that it was right for the book to have this kind of dual mystery going.
So that dual mystery. So adding that part about the other disappearance years before. I mean, so how did that come to you? So as you were writing, you just thought
Yeah.
it lends itself to that, or?
Yeah, I started to kind of ask myself why the family was the way it was, why Barbara's parents were so cold to her, why Alice, her mother, was so deeply troubled and had fallen into addiction. And I sort of began to imagine that maybe they had experienced some earlier tragedy, if that makes sense. And the tragedy that I imagined is that she wasn't the first child that they had lost. So yeah,
That
that
makes
was that's where that came from, sort of just imagining their motives and their
So how
is
long did it take you to write?
that's not on my end, right? The noise, or is it?
No, I think that's on my end, sorry.
Okay, good. No, I just was like, "What can I close?" But I don't think it's on okay, cool. I'm fine with it if you are. I just wanted to make sure that it
No,
wasn't.
that's
All right,
fine.
good.
So how long did it take you to write The God of the Woods?
Took me about, 4 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow,
most of my I seem without trying to be, I seem to be like a 4-year clock. I publish books about every 4 years.
years? And
Mhm.
so I always have to ask, what there were so many characters in this book, and they
Mhm.
were all just so vivid and, exceptional. Was there a character that was more difficult to write, or a scene or a chapter or something that was more challenging than the others to write in this book?
Yeah, the character of Alice was a real challenge for me because I when I first conceived of her, I had a really hard time liking her. I've she was very unkind to her daughter. She did not treat her staff well. Um, but as I wrote her, I began to develop a little more sympathy for her, as I came to understand that really she was essentially in an arranged marriage as
Yeah.
a 17-year-old, and I think she never really had a chance to mature. And I think she's in a very controlling marriage, and her husband really tells her what to do, at all times. And I have young kids, and so, the scenes that I wrote of her being unable to comfort her son those are sort of like my nightmares. I explored my deepest fears as a parent, and therefore they were pretty emotionally challenging to write, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about Alice actually because I
Mhm.
found her really compelling, and so I wanted to ask, did anybody inspire that character, or anybody did you look to anybody or anything to try to write Alice? Because she did stand out in my mind.
Nobody in my personal life, but as I wrote her, I began to realize that, there's one person she sort of reminds me of, and sounds strange, but she has a little touch of Princess Diana of
Really?
Wales. Yeah, just in terms of how young she was when she was married off into this very
Right.
powerful family, and the kind of unhealthy coping mechanisms she developed to deal with that.
So how did you come up with the title, The God of the Woods?
The God of the Woods took me a long time to find. For a while, the book was actually I was calling the book Self-Reliance, which is,
Hmm,
of course, the name of the
yeah.
home, that the family has, that they've named themselves. And, nobody in my publishing company really liked that title, which I understand, it's a little dry. So they encouraged me to find a different one, and I came up with The God of the Woods as I was researching the etymology of the term wood panic, which is a real phenomenon in which somebody starts to feel very disoriented in the woods, because all trees kind of look alike. So if you turn in a full circle, uh, you might suddenly find yourself very lost. And I discovered that the word panic actually derives from the Greek god Pan, who was a god of the woods, who was said to like to play tricks on humans and to enjoy, making them feel lost in the woods. And from there, I kind of ran with that phrase because I felt it was a phrase that could apply to a lot of different characters in the book. So not just Pan, but also the Van Laar family itself. The Van Laars themselves, I think, sort of perceive themselves to be like gods of their domain falsely. I don't think they should think that way, but they do. And similarly, I think Jacob Sluter is kind of a chaotic force of nature wandering around in the background. And There are a couple of other characters I think the term could describe, but, is this a spoiler-free book club or a
You can
spoiler-full?
say a spoiler. Everybody I think
Everyone
everybody read the book that's
okay.
watching, yeah.
Well, actually, at the end, like, Barbara herself, I thought of as a god of the woods
Mhm.
living on this island and in a kind of very mythological setting, and, um, so, yeah, I love titles that have, like, multiple axes of meaning, and that was one.
So I think you answered this before, but I wanted to ask you why you chose the Adirondacks as as a setting for this, and did you go and visit it again, to do some research as you were writing the book?
Not in a not in a planned way. I'm there all the time, and, we go there multiple times this summer, and my parents basically live there in the summer, and, yeah, we have this place that's been in our family for a long time, and so it's just, spending a lot of time in a place, you naturally acquire a lot of knowledge about the setting. I did
Right.
have to do some research into the history of the Adirondacks, as I was writing, which and I actually ended up working with a genealogist because I got so interested in my own family's history in the area, and
Mhm.
that is how we had family stories, like oral tradition about our family, but, I wanted to know the actual facts of the names of my ancestors who lived there and what their occupation was and all
Wow.
that. My grandmother, who's no longer alive, did have memories of the original house of her family,
Wow.
um, before basically a river was flooded, to make a reservoir, and we lost our ancestral house, during that government project, but my grandmother had memories of the house before it was flooded.
So I always ask, do you have family members or friends who read drafts of your book as you're writing it?
Um, this one yes, I had so I went through an MFA program, for creative writing, and I have a few really close friends still who are also writers, and when we're having trouble with our work, sometimes we'll swap drafts, and
Right.
I believe that I did send this to 1 or 2 of those friends. Normally, just send it to my agent and my editor, um, and my husband typically reads books only after they're done, basically.
So did you go to summer camp as a kid?
I did, I went for 2 summers, but I was a lot like the character of Tracy in the sense that I was older than the other girls in my cabin. I mean, I went later to camp than they had gone, and therefore they all knew each other and they were very bonded by the time I got there at 11 or so. And so I found it a little difficult to kind of like break into the
Mm,
camp culture and found myself kind of, hovering on the outskirts a lot. It was much different than Camp Emerson. I went for 2 weeks, not 2 months, and, I also it was not at all a camp for the wealthy. It was a camp for very
everybody.
very middle class kids doing regular things, but it was I still learned about what summer camp was like during those, 2 summers that I went.
So, did anything has anything surprised you about the reaction to this book? Because it's been quite strong. I mean, did you expect everybody to um, to love it as much as they have? I mean, did you expect that, or has anything surprised you?
Yeah, it surprises me all the time. The God of the Woods is actually my 5th novel, but a lot of people, I think it's either my 1st or my 2nd because they've heard of well, only The God of the Woods, or they've heard of Long Bright River and The God of the Woods, but my career has definitely been a slow build, and so that makes me very grateful for
Mhm.
books of mine that have done well, and especially for The God of the Woods, which has really been, um, embraced by readers, and, I've gotten a lot of, responses from it, and I never take it for granted because I know the other side of that equation as
Right.
well, where you publish a book very quietly.
So, besides Long Bright River, I mean, is there if somebody's never read anything by you before, would you recommend that to be the next book they read by you, or something else?
If you love mysteries, then probably Long Bright River is the other pretty traditional mystery that I wrote. I would say the book of mine that is the how do I say is the 3rd most popular is a book called Heft, which
Oh,
was
okay.
the second book that I wrote.
Mm.
But I really love if I have a favorite of my books, it might be a book called The Unseen World that was the third book I wrote and is very it's sort of autobiographical. I put a lot of my own life into it,
Oh,
and therefore it's kind of near and dear to my heart.
okay. Well, everybody read that.
Yeah,
So,
go
The
read
God
The
of
Unseen World.
yeah, The God of the Woods seems like it lends itself to a movie or a TV series
Mhm.
or something. Is that happening, or can you tell us anything about that?
I can tell you a little bit. So the Long Bright River is a series. It came out just last month on Peacock, and it stars Amanda Seyfried. And I hope you all watch and enjoy that because I was involved with it. I was a co-creator and a co-writer and a co-executive producer and on set and involved in a lot of the creative decisions. And that was a really interesting learning experience for me because it's the first show that I've ever had greenlit and helped to make. And I liked the process so much that I plan to continue to work in TV, specifically on the adaptations of my books. So the only thing I can tell you about The God of the Woods is that it has been optioned, along with actually The Unseen World has also been
Yeah,
optioned. But what that means is it's very much like in process and in development, and there's no guarantee that it will be made, but we're working on it.
thank you. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that about Long Bright River. So that's on Peacock. How many
Yeah.
episodes are there in that? How many?
8 episodes and they dropped all at once. So if you feel
I will
like a
have
weekend
to watch that.
binge,
Yeah,
you can watch Long Bright River on Peacock.
that's good to
All
know.
8 episodes.
I've always
I've heard from many people who have said that they have in fact watched like 4 episodes one night and 4 episodes the next night because they wanted to know what happened. So I
that's
hope that
exciting.
that's true for you if you watch it.
And getting to work with those famous actors, that must be exciting. That's great. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, she was
yeah.
great.
So I have to ask, what authors inspire you, or what book is on your nightstand? What are you reading, or can you recommend any books from other authors to us?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of, crime fiction, I am a huge fan of, both Tana French and Dennis Lehane. I think their work is really wonderful. I also really love classic, like, golden age British detective fiction.
Yeah.
Big Agatha Christie fan. There's a writer from New Zealand who was named Ngaio Marsh, Ngaio Marsh, and she was an amazing writer of mysteries. There's one called Death of a Fool that I read when I was really young that
Mm,
really influenced me, in terms of how to construct a puzzle, like how to make a puzzle for your readers to solve. In terms of what I'm reading right now, I just finished The Wren by Anne Enright. I think I have that correct.
mm,
Which was amazing. It's beautiful writing. There's a book I love called The Days of Aphrodite by Asali Solomon. She's also a friend of mine who lives in Philadelphia, and that's a really amazing book. Look at sort of like what a college friendship is later in life, and also a look at what it's like to be married to a politician who may or may not be doing something wrong.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I like those books a lot.
So what are you working on now?
I'm working on hopefully the series adaptation of The God of the Woods, fingers crossed, and I'm working on a new novel, but I'm extremely superstitious about talking about my work in progress, so I basically stop there. It's a new novel, but there's nothing more I can say.
So what's your writing day like? I mean, do you get up and say, I'm going to write for 6 hours, or I mean, what's the process like for you?
When I'm in the generative phase of writing a novel, which I am right now, just meaning like just trying to get words on the page and tell the story in its first draft form, I get up early every weekday. I get up at 5:30
Oh, yeah.
and come down to my basement, which is where I am right now because I had to drop my kids at school and didn't have time to go to my office, which is why we're in this lovely like,
It's
sort
lovely.
of dungeon looking here, I'll show you the ceiling. This is what the ceiling looks like. There's board games behind me. This is not my normal writing office. Thanks for rolling with the punches of motherhood. But, I come down here and I write, for about 2 hours until
Okay.
7:30. My husband gets up and gets the kids started getting ready for their day, and then I come upstairs at 7:30 and I go from there. And because I teach at Temple in Philadelphia, and I also do screenwriting, and I also parent, I really only do those 2 hours of writing, fiction writing work in the morning, and that's it. I don't return to it after that, but 2 hours a day is enough to really kinda get me going and feel like I've accomplished something on the book.
Yeah. But it
Yeah.
typically takes you, like you said, about 4 years. That's
Yeah,
what
that's probably why it, because I'm only writing 2 hours a day, but,
I
um,
yeah.
there are authors who publish a book a year who I imagine treat their, they write for a full workday, I'm sure.
I love Philadelphia. That's such a
Me
great
too.
yeah.
Yeah, I love
Uh,
it.
so I just always ask, because the girlfriend is all about female friendship.
Mhm.
So you said you had an author that was a friend of yours. I mean, what do you like to do with your girlfriends that are for fun when you're not writing?
So, I mean, it's a not an original answer, but Philly has a really great, restaurant scene, and so I have a standing date with a friend to go out to dinner about once a month. I have a really good group of girlfriends who are very I have an almost 9-year-old daughter, and they've kind of adopted her collectively as, like, we my girlfriends who are my age
Yeah,
and my daughter, we all hang out, like, again, probably, like, once or twice a month, and do something that, like, play a board game or do something that she would also enjoy, and that's a big treat for her, and she feels very grown up. And I love going away on trips with my girlfriends. I still have, a pretty strong group of friends, from college who I wish I saw more, but we have a huge, group text that's constantly running, and staying in touch electronically is, as it's convenient, and it is kind of nice to still feel bonded over, just I'm thinking of you guys, and here's what I did today, or here's a photo of what I'm doing.
yeah. That's really nice because a lot of people are not in touch with their college or high school friends
Yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. The book is The God of the Woods. If you haven't read it, and I think everybody has, but please do pick it up and read it. It's an excellent thriller, and it's a page turner for sure. For some reason, I got the large print one, so it's like really huge.
It's even bigger.
Yes. So thank you
Thanks,
guys.
Kelly.
Everybody stay online tonight and stay on the book club page because I'm going to be posting some conversation starters so that you guys can talk about what you loved about the book. And a reminder that Fiona Davis is joining us next month. And our book is The Stolen Queen. And so Fiona will be joining us on May 20th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on this book club page. So thank you so much, Liz, for joining us. And have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you so much, Shelley. That was really a fun conversation. Thank you.
Thank you
And
so
thanks
much.
everyone else for reading.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.